Headline reads, Taiwan and China to face more flooding as tropical storm Haitang follows Typhoon Nesat. The double threat. So my question was, when was the last time that two typhoons passed over Taiwan in 2 days? The answer, 1967. So thinking about time repeating in cycles as well as climate, so could we expect the same saturation of Japan that happened in the 1960s with massive floods and rain? How about the coldest Siberia on record, Chicago blizzard? And can we match up smaller cycles to larger cycles over time? We know when there was droughts during the grand solar minimums across Asia. We've seen when temperature drops, emperors and dynasties collapse. And of all the effects of the sun, this Earth spot connection that occurred just as the typhoon rolled over Taiwan, earthquake. This is a good way for you to back check on the USGS to see how many they've deleted off their records, because these are all the ones off the Taiwan Geological Service. And if you're looking for more information on the Grand Solar Minimum, episode number 27 of Mini Ice Age Conversations, inventor Lee Wheelbarger and myself discuss what life will be like as the weather intensifies and food shortages sweep the planet during the Grand Solar Minimum. And as you're watching the video, please remember to subscribe to Adapt 2030 and press the bell to make sure you stay subscribed and get the latest updates. The headline reads, Taiwan and China face more flooding as tropical storm Haitang follows Typhoon Neat. They call it the double threat. Massive flooding. Some images for you here coming out of Pingtung. Streets turning into rivers, flooding in Linbian. Also not the best conditions for riding a motorbike, but you know, people still go out in these typhoons. And if you hadn't seen the news, there were two systems that were fighting for dominance in the same area of the Western Pacific, and they both turned into typhoons and one followed the other. You can see the moisture that was dragged over Luzon in the Philippines collapses into a single storm and now is being dragged over to China as well across Taiwan. These were two separate typhoons. So my question was, when was the last time that this occurred? It's an unusual weather phenomenon to say the least. So looking back in history, 1967 was the last time this occurred. So taking a look at the Pacific typhoon season, wide out here for you, you'll see some of these same strange tracks, especially the storm that's right under Japan now. It's looping back in on itself. You see the same tracks here right now. So knowing that we're going into a grand solar minimum and that the tropical rain belt and the intertropical convergence zone will be shifted during this time, you might start to expect to see these types of phenomenon occurring. This is the track of the first typhoon directly across the north part of the island, and the second typhoon actually was dragged with this system going right up the spine of the mountains. These are the cloud height and temperature. The bright white is the tallest and the coolest of the cloud graphic here, so you can see the temperature readings. But the visible cloud band from the morning to the afternoon, look how dense that is on the visible satellite. You can just see the striations. It's not really forming an eye, but it's just at the edge of typhoon strength. But looking back into typhoon season, it's actually been very much like this. It's been quiet all the way until July. So if we're going to repeat a 50-year cycle, August, September, and October should be absolutely typhoon after typhoon in the Western Pacific. Now, I'm a fan of studying cycles in time. John Casey's 206-year cycle is very close to the de Vries cycle, but inside there can also be dissected into 50 to 60-year cycles. So, are we matching one of these? And is this the time marker as the beginning, entry into cycles overlapping on cycles? Because at the very minimum, the 206-year cycle for the grand solar minimum is overlapping right now on top of this 50-year cycle. So we have verification of two cycles overlapping on top of each other. But is this grand solar minimum in itself an overlap of more powerful cycles? Because we see this time and time again, Every time the temperature drops, dynasties collapse, especially in China. Now back to the 50-year cycle here, looking back in time into Japan. We see massive precipitation above normal. And then this last winter, we saw record snowfalls across the same areas in western Japan. This is matching up. Now we go back to 1967 and the deadliest floods, Japan and Brazil. What's happening in this last few weeks in Brazil? Massive flooding, cold wave, unbelievable crop wipeout down there due to unusual extremes. Let's look at the 1967 cold wave that swept through Central Asia and Siberia, saw the coldest winter temperatures on record. This year, we're seeing snow in July in Siberia, not once, but twice. And we saw snow in the early weeks of July 4 times across Russia. So we're starting to see the same matching pattern again. Now when we look over at China, top left, A, drought area percentage, I put that orange asterisk there. If it indeed is matching 1967, there should be a break in the drought in the Heilongjiang area for a short while, for a couple years, and then right back into the drought again. 1967 Chicago blizzard. We shall see this year if it is or it isn't. And then we can jump over to the Middle East and take a look at the precipitation as well with their drought severity index. So if this is a 50-year cycle, you just need to do a little research to see what the climate is going to do in repeat. Now let's jump back to the Little Ice Age, circa 1640. This is even a more powerful cycle that's overlapping on top. We can see where the temperature drops are. And if we look at Australia, we see the exact same matchup as today. Temperatures are dropping across southern Australia. They just lost 40% of their wheat production versus last year's total, down 15 million tons. We see the same cold, wet conditions in Canada. And what we saw, that rare blizzard wipe out Kansas wheat crop in the United States. So let's go back into history. I'm digging into history to find these cycles of drought, wet, and grand solar minimum. We can find records of drought back to 1790 through the 1800s. This is going to be the repeat for Asia. We can look at the stalactite cores coming out of the caves and see when it was wetter and drier. Specifically, from 1650 to 1800, it was much wetter across these areas in South America and some areas in Asia. So my question for you is, if we're overlapping powerful cycles going up the scale, and we know the 50 and the 206 and possibly the 412 or the 800-year cycle are overlapping at this moment, where are we on the Bray cycle? Where are we on Maurice Cottrell's 3,740-year cycle? Why did the ancients leave us so much mathematical information and astrological observations on their cycles that they witnessed? The Eddy cycle, named after this new grand solar minimum, Jack Eddy's research puts it at the 1,000-year cycle. Which are we matching? And this is what my channel is devoted to, is finding out what the start point is for this new entry into the overlap of all these powerful cycles landing right now on our historical timeline. And it's all based on effects of the sun. And suspicious observers and the Thunderbolts Project absolutely show that there is a sunspot, earth spot connection. And as this typhoon rolled over North Taiwan, 2 earthquakes were triggered. And for those of you who often notice that the USGS deletes earthquakes, here's a good way to look back. This is the Taiwan Geological Survey showing you all the earthquakes back over the last week and a half. See which ones are not on the USGS map. Thanks for watching. Hope you got something out of the video. If you like the type of reports I'm bringing you, please support me on Patreon. And as always, click that subscribe button.